By 1917, the Western Front in Flanders had become a graveyard of mud and blood. The artillery had churned the earth into a heavy, suffocating sludge that swallowed men whole, and millions were dying to gain only a few feet of ground. All movement in the region was dictated by a single landform, Messines Ridge. From this high ground, German observers could see every Allied movement for miles. It gave the defenders total visual dominance, making any traditional surface assault a suicide mission. To break the deadlock, the British High Command made a radical strategic pivot. If they could not advance horizontally across the surface, they would have to bypass the ridge vertically. They would dig underneath the enemy lines, launching a new kind of war fought entirely in the absolute dark. To dig through the heavy Flanders clay in absolute silence, the British military looked beyond its own ranks. They secretly recruited civilian professional miners from the coal pits of Wales and the deep tunnels of London, specialists known as the Claykickers. These men left the explosive chaos of the surface and dropped 90 feet underground into a lightless, frozen world. The air in these narrow shafts was thin and often toxic. The miners worked in a suffocating space where the heavy wooden shoring was the only thing holding back the crushing weight of the damp earth above. They had traded the artillery of the trenches for a world where a single sound could be a death sentence, and a cave-in meant being buried alive in the dark. The primary obstacle to reaching the German lines was the Earth's ability to carry sound. Using a standard steel pickaxe would send rhythmic, echoing thuds through the soil, instantly alerting German counterminers digging their own shafts nearby. Survival depended on clay kicking. Lying back in a specialized harness, miners used their legs to push silent wooden spades directly into the solid clay face. This continuous pressure smoothly cored out the clay, moving tons of earth without generating detectable vibration waves. But the Germans were listening. They sat in parallel tunnels with stethoscopic geophones pressed against the walls, hunting for the faint scrape of a shovel or the sound of a falling tool. The underground front had become a high-stakes psychological game, where life and death were decided by the ability to listen closely and the discipline to remain completely undetected. In several sectors, the rival tunnel networks were so close that only inches of soft clay separated the two armies. When the tunnels accidentally breached, the fighting was silent and desperate. Men struggled in the pitch black using survival knives and bare hands, fighting for air in the narrow corridors. For 18 months, the British maintained this covert operation, successfully carving out 21 massive subterranean caverns directly beneath the German defensive strongpoints. To finish the trap, they secretly hauled nearly 1 million pounds of highly volatile ammonal powder through the miles of tunnels. They packed the caverns and meticulously wired a complex detonation matrix back to the surface. By the summer of 1917, the miners had transformed the ridge into a 1 million-pound geological bomb, waiting for a single electrical spark. At 3 a.m. on June 7th, the constant roar of the British artillery suddenly stopped. Across the ridge, German defenders believed the battle had paused, completely unaware of the massive charge waiting beneath their feet. At exactly 3:10 a.m., the plungers were thrown. Electricity surged through miles of wire, hitting the stockpiles of ammonal simultaneously. 19 colossal pillars of fire and earth instantly tore into the sky. The explosion vaporized the German trenches and killed 10,000 men in a matter of seconds. The blast was so massive it registered on monitoring equipment across the English Channel. Hundreds of miles away, citizens in London felt the seismic shockwave as it shook the ground beneath their feet. The release of energy was so total that the ridge's tactical advantage disappeared instantly. Allied troops were able to advance across the decimated ground with almost no resistance. The victory broke the stalemate, but the sheer scale of the engineering left a permanent physical mark on the Earth. Where the ridge once stood, 19 massive, lunar-like craters now cut into the soil. The explosions had gouged out millions of tons of earth, physically erasing the high ground the German army had spent years fortifying. Today, those scars are still visible in the Flanders countryside. Over the last century, the craters have naturally filled with water, transforming into still, quiet ponds. These pools of peace are the only lasting monuments to the anonymous civilian miners who fought a war in the absolute dark to change the shape of the earth.